And welcome back. You are watching Business Today here on KTN News, and would now like to focus our attention, of course, on tax collection. And the previous story you did watch was about the Commissioner General of the Kenya Revenue Authority saying they had fallen short on some of the tax collection targets, and mostly in income tax, corporation tax, as well as import VAT tax. And question is, why aren't you filing your tax returns, or why aren't you paying your taxes in this case? Is it because it's a very tedious process for you to actually file your returns, or do you think it needs to be made easier? Well, the Kenya Revenue Authority has made it easier by introducing the iTax system. I think it was rolled out a year ago. A number of people were able to file their returns online, but some of you haven't yet filed your returns. So let's get into understanding what the iTax system is all about, what it does, how it works. And we're going to be having a gentleman on the other side of the screen who is going to be talking to us about, or at least demonstrating to us how it works, as Millicent Sina, who is in charge of the iTax project that is in the Domestic Taxes Department at KRA, speaks to us about iTax. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Children.
Well, iTax, some people understand it, some people don't. How would you break it down for us as taxpayers?
iTax system, it is a reform initiative under KRA to automate the domestic tax processes. What people do not understand is that iTax is both for internal users and for external users. So what is different from the other systems that we had before is that it is not only a burden to the taxpayer to get automated, but also a challenge to the officers to automate the internal processes. So I would put it in a snapshot that iTax is actually the automation of DTD processes, that is domestic tax processes, both internal and external functions. So anything that does with filing of returns, registration of PINs, and even beyond that onto the compliance and the audit functionalities of iTax.
All right. And just like you put it, you know, a number of them would actually want to know where do they go to in case they want to file their returns online. Might you want to educate us on that as well?
Well, I would start by saying self-help, right? Log on to itax.kra.go.ke. But then you would ask me, what if I really don't know where to start with that? Then I would refer you to our website. What if you want to talk to me? Yes, that's where our support centers, we have 13 of them countrywide, right? And our Huduma centers are, we have heavily invested in our support structures, and there are people there to listen to you, to guide you through the entire filing process. So in the event that you are lost or that you are not interacting with the system and you're having any challenges, then yes, you're welcome at our support centers or Huduma centers countrywide.
Okay. And, you know, at the end of it all, I would really have wanted to know how much tax has been collected through the iTax system. If you have the figures, maybe you might want to tell us that. But what are some of the challenges you are experiencing as Kenya Revenue Authority when it comes to collection of tax using the iTax system?
I would say, whereas in previous sessions, maybe I would be able to highlight the challenges more. But as we stand as is right now, is that 70% of our collections are actually generated through the iTax system. That means out of the value that KRA is able to collect, 70% of it can be accounted through our iTax payment gateway platform. Yes, that said, we do experience that there is 30% that falls outside the iTax system. Now the question is, how do we account for this 30%? It's actually the bulk of it, and I would say actually the other 30% is transactions that are normally facilitated through government systems like the IFMI system and the Central Bank of Kenya. We must appreciate that government, of course, is our greatest spender. And if that money falls outside iTax, then that means that is what accounts for anything beyond what iTax is able to account for.
Okay. Usually when people file their returns, sometimes, you know, there's the issue of tax evasion, and they're not going to do it anytime they feel like they must do it. But then there's a deadline for it. Yes. The deadline is end of June.
Yes.
What happens to those who have not filed their taxes by then?
Well, there are penalties, and these penalties are system generated. Some taxpayers may have fallen victim to that last year, right? I'm happy to say that this year we're experiencing way more returns coming through the system, but nonetheless, the system is auto-generated to generate the penalties in the event that you do not file your return by the midnight of 30th of June in the current financial year.
Okay, so let's now get back to the basics. If you can take a look at what's happening on the screen.
Yeah.
That is the iTax page, I guess.
Yes.
So take us through it once again. When you want to file your tax returns, what exactly do you do? I guess the first thing you do is, you said you go to iTax?
You go to itax.kra.go.ke. That will get you to the portal page, what we call the portal page. Basically, that is where you enter your PIN and your password, and you proceed to log in. Once you log in, that's when you get to your account or your profile, as we may say it.
I guess you can now get onto the login
which is where we are
browser?
right now. Yes.
Yes. So what happens when you get there?
Now, this is the portal page, right? You enter your PIN number, and then you click on continue. It will ask for your password. Now, the password, these are unique credentials, of course, forwarded to you, emailed by your system.
Right.
After you log in, it allows you to customize your password. So in this reference, we're looking at the customized password, which is something, of course, more memorable to you. And then the arithmetic question at the bottom. What people don't understand is that is actually an arithmetic question, and then you click on log in.
It's not about proving whether or not you're a robot or a human.
Well, it goes beyond that, yes.
Okay. So when you move on, where do you go after that?
You go to the option of returns. What you're seeing at the top, those are actually your menus. You go to return, and under return, there are many options. The first one being file return, but then again, given that we are in the employment era, you will go to the very bottom, which is ITR, that is income tax resident for employment income only.
Income tax
resident for employment income only. Now, this is actually the simplified version of what we had last year, and it pre-populates data actually that has been filed by your employer in the year of 2015. So that is why it is categorically stated that it is ITR for employment income only. So, click on that.
A number of taxpayers who have used the iTax system say it's quite very slow. Have you worked on the speeds of it, processing someone's returns once they start to enter the data into the system?
I would say if I compare this year and last year yet again, it is a clear demonstration that we have done something about our speed. Because as we speak right now, we normally experience about 400 to 500,000 logins a day. Those are successful logins. You cannot compare that to last year where we used to have under 100,000 logins in a day. So at the moment, I would say that it is commendable, really, the progress that we've been able to make.
All right, so when you get there,
yes,
what happens?
You click on ITR for employment income only. And it proceeds to this page. Now, you can see some information has already been pre-populated for you. What you need to put is the date that you're filing for, and this is for the year 2015, so that will be 1st of January 2015.
Okay.
Yes, and then the system will auto-generate, of course, the closing period, which is 31st of December, and then it will ask you whether you have employment income, and the confirmation would be yes.
Okay.
In which case, you click on next.
And then right after that, what do you do?
After that, it will get you to now the pre-populated page. As you can see, some information has already been drawn for you. Under the basic information, those are anything that is marked with the red asterisks. It means it is a mandatory entry, right? So you need to confirm whether you have any of the fields that have been pre-populated of the 6. This includes, do you have a mortgage? So you would say yes or no. Do you have an insurance relief? Yes or no. So those are mandatory fields. And in the event that you select yes for any of those, it will pre-populate an additional field for you to fill the details of, let's say, your mortgage provider, etc. Right? So given that in the case, of course, we're in right now, if we are to say no, then you just go to the next field, which is on the bank details.
All right. There have also been some complaints about the response. When you've filed just about everything, you've entered all the data you must enter.
Yes.
Sometimes it takes long to respond and say, all the information has been received or whatever.
Yes.
A message is supposed to give right after that, after you filed your returns. So has that been worked on?
That has definitely. We have expanded our servers. Yes, we've heavily invested, and I can actually confirm that if you compare the speeds of this year and last year, yet again, I will continue to emphasize that we have way improved. But anyway, in the event that that is experienced, because of course, again, we cannot contest that it will not happen, then it basically means that there are many people. I have just demonstrated that we have about 500,000 logins in a day, and I request that you just refresh and you re-enter. Given that in this return, right, most of the figures are pre-populated, then it should not be a long wait before it actually goes through.
Some of the respondents that we did ask whether or not they are satisfied with the iTax system, most of them said it was a very long process.
Yes.
You know, there's too much information to be entered. Isn't there a space in this iTax system where one can just go and enter, say, a one-pager of information, and that's it, and you're able to submit your taxes and you know that you're over and done with it without having to spend 45 minutes trying to enter your taxes?
I think we definitely appreciate that, yes. And it was driven by that agenda that we came up with a simplified, what we call the ITR return, where any information that is held by KRA is pre-populated for you. Then whatever it is that you need to fill is something that is actually accountable or known to only yourself, and therefore for KRA we wouldn't have any information that would be able to assist through that process. That said, of course, it means that we've only simplified this as the first return, and we continue to make efforts. We actually have a special unit within iTax that is focused on the customer, and it seeks to, it's actually called improvements. It's actually iTax improvement experience, and it seeks to actually simplify the process for us. So I do challenge Kenyans actually to just interact with the system a bit more. I guarantee that it is friendlier this year. It will be friendlier next year as we explore other returns that we can be able to simplify further for the taxpayer.
All right. So what kind of simplification are we looking at going forward?
Maybe for one, if I can just demonstrate the IT1 return, right? So that you see the power of the system to pre-populate any figures, then we'd be able to understand what other advancements beyond that are anticipated.
Do you have the iTax one return form? Do you have it on the laptop? Or
it's actually there, yes. Yeah, if he is to proceed.
Okay. Okay, if you can go to that
below,
maybe, so we can
under
take
the
a look
bank
at that.
details, yes. I just want us to go to the next section T, under tax computation. You can see the figures that have been pre-populated in this case. We have the zeros. Zeros, basically, that means we do not have as KRA from our third-party data any information as relates to that. But on the others, as you can see, it pre-populates anything else. Given that your employer filed the 12 months returns last year, then anything that the employer entered that is also reconciled through your ledger, it is credited in your ledger, then the same is able to be pre-populated. We are looking into a future where we have things like withholding taxes, right? For VAT purposes, for instance, right? So those VAT withholding certificates would be able to be pre-populated prior to you filling your return. Yes, so even as we seek to integrate with other systems and obtain third-party data, we are going into IFMIS integration very soon, 1st of July, hopefully. And with such platforms, for as long as any of the people we can be able to pull data from, if they have a database that we can pull data from, then there goes the simplification, because it means that's one less data for a taxpayer to enter when they're filing any return. All
right. So how do you know that people are understating their taxes using the iTax system?
Now there goes my joy, the power of the iTax system. We are currently, as I have demonstrated, looking at pay-as-you-earn, for instance. Let me use that for point of clarification. The pay-as-you-earn currently, we are looking at about 51% uptick, so to speak. That is vis-a-vis the number of employers who are registered for the particular tax head.
Yeah.
Now, anytime an employer, such as yourself, standard group, that would be, anytime an employer files for you the pay-as-you-earn return, it credits your ledger. Correct? And that same applies to me and to any other person. Now, when you come and file your ITR return, that is an income tax return, right? I am able to see whether there is a communication or reconciliation between whatever it is that your employer claimed to have deducted from your taxes vis-a-vis what you are claiming was deducted. If there is any inconsistency, then that's when now that task is raised for an officer to do a follow-up with the employer. Now, the same would apply to VAT. The same would apply to any other tax that is being filed by yourself. So actually, that is what we call the power of the system for reconciliation purposes.
Okay.
What have you put as your input tax, i.e. the sales you made? What is the other person claiming they was bought from them? And through that inconsistency, we are able to raise that as a task of follow-up. And that's why we say that iTax actually enhances compliance levels.
All right, enhancing compliance levels. Well, I do not know if you agree with that, so you can respond to our Twitter poll question where we are asking, are you satisfied